On March 21st, 2021, an up-and-coming young Russian oligarch and his wife touched down in their private jet at tiny Sion Airport in the Swiss Alps. It's a wedding anniversary celebration, and they're on their way to a luxurious ski vacation. Sion is the gateway to the famed resort of Zermatt, where the elite go to ski and to party. Sion is still an hour's drive from the slopes, so the truly wealthy take a short walk across the tarmac and board helicopters to take them directly to the slopes. The oligarch's name is Vladislav Kliushin, and at this moment, he's at the absolute height of his powers. He's built a fabulously successful company, he's cultivated connections at the highest levels of the Russian government, and he works for the office of the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. But what the oligarch doesn't know is that U.S. law enforcement has been monitoring the flight since it left Moscow, and they want to charge him with crimes that go to the heart of the American financial system. The victims are investors in iconic American companies, including names on the cutting edge of the U.S. economy like Tesla, Snapchat, and Roku. At stake is the integrity of American capital markets. It's all part of the dangerous underworld of the global financial system. One veteran Russian spy tells me the Kremlin sees financial markets as America's strength and a target to attack. To protect him, we agreed to conceal his identity. But this man, who worked for Vladimir Putin's intelligence service, says the case of Vladislav Kliushin was just one small part of a much bigger Russian operation against Western finance. Kliushin's story is just the part that we can see.
It's a war right now happening between Russia and the West. Finances and banks and financial sector itself is just one of the battlefields.
I'm Eamon Javers, and this is the story of Putin's traitor.
The story begins when veteran FBI investigator B.J. Kang gets a tip from the Securities and Exchange Commission, which has spotted a pattern of unusual and suspicious activity in the stock market. They suspect insider trading. Someone is getting financial information ahead of time, against the law, and cashing in on Wall Street.
The information we got early on was there were a number of traders. They were just hitting it out of the park.
Kang is one of the FBI's most storied financial crime investigators. He's busted some of the most notorious Wall Street criminals of all time. He was there for the arrest of Ponzi scheme mastermind Bernie Madoff, and he perp-walked insider trader Raj Rajaratnam. That's why Reuters once called him the most feared man on Wall Street.
We worked it as a regular insider trading case. Just go after the evidence and then follow the evidence and see where that takes you.
Working with Kang is Stephen Frank, the veteran prosecutor who led the Varsity Blues case against rich parents who corrupted the American college admissions process. Frank began his career as a reporter before going to law school and becoming a prosecutor. Using that experience, he sizes up the tip that came in from the SEC.
We knew that somebody was up to no good, and we knew that the scale of it was pretty big because it was happening quarter after quarter in stock after stock, and all of these different people were trading on it, and they were making a lot of money. So the brazenness of it was really striking to us.
The tip reveals that foreign traders are targeting the biggest American companies, well-known brands like Tesla and Roku, as well as lesser-known companies like the financial firm SS&C Technologies and the electronics company Avnet. And millions of dollars in illicit profits for the traders mean millions of dollars in losses for regular investors in American markets.
It's really unfair to have people sitting in the comfort of their offices overseas behind a wall that they think protects them, taking advantage, stealing information, and trading on it to the detriment of investors all over the world. But at the very beginning, we were like, are we ever really going to be able to figure this out? And even if we can figure it out, are we ever going to be able to lay hands on these people?
The FBI agents knew the overseas traders were making mysterious and enormous profits in the U.S. stock market. They suspected the explanation might be a computer intrusion, a hack, but they had to figure out where the traders were getting their information.
We went after the IPs, the domains, whatever information that we got, we went after it. Subpoenas, court orders, search warrant. Subpoenas, court order, search warrant. Just wash, rinse, repeat.
A lot of those subpoenas went to Western companies that had access to the suspects' digital history, emails, texts, photos, and videos documenting their lives. The FBI was able to obtain a mountain of documentation, and buried in all that data was one striking fact. The SEC reported that all of the targeted companies had one thing in common. They used the same filing agents.
Before this case started, I didn't know what a filing agent was. I've been in this business for a long time. I've worked in securities fraud, and I didn't know that there was an entire industry of companies that assist publicly traded companies to file their required reports with the SEC. But they do exist, there's a number of them, and what was unique here was that all of these different companies in all these different sectors were using two of these filing agents to file their quarterly earnings reports.
So that's the big light bulb moment.
That was a big light bulb moment.
Federal prosecutor Seth Costo works alongside Stephen Frank on the case. He sees what the hackers are doing inside the filing agents' computers.
They obtain the usernames and passwords for employees at the filing agents. And as a result, we're able to log in, like you or I might log into our office accounts, and look through the confidential information of any company they wanted at any time.
And then they discover indications that the filing agent computers have been sending data to a network of offshore computers, and someone had taken steps to hide that traffic. Still, they left behind a clue. Someone had to pay for those computers, and that someone paid for them with Bitcoin. Investigators discover the IP address for the computer that made the Bitcoin transaction.
We were watching the hack play out in real time, even as the filing agents were doing everything they could to lock out the hackers.
When they trace back that IP address, they discover exactly where the cyber attack is coming from. It's coming from Moscow.
And I find this, and I'm like, what is this? I was like, holy moly, is this what we think it is?
Suddenly, the investigators are finding a lot of signals pointing them to Moscow.
One of the funny parts was most of the access was happening in the middle of the night for the employees whose usernames were being used, and in the middle of the day in Moscow.
So they were working regular business hours in Moscow.
Exactly.
A tiny mistake by the hacker leads to the breakthrough they're looking for. One of the Moscow hackers uses his own IP address to log on to his iTunes account just before he uses the same IP address to steal documents from a pharmaceutical company.
It's another moment, one Sunday by myself, reviewing the records and then identifying that IP in his account and then identifying in the logs that we got from the victim companies. I was like, holy moly, this is, and just 4 minutes apart. I said, this is incredible.
The hacker registered that Apple account under his real name, and that means the FBI now knows who he is, Ivan Ermakov.
And then once we learned who this guy was, I said, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is amazing.
Kang is amazed because American law enforcement has dealt with Ermakov before. He's a veteran of the fearsome Russian GRU military intelligence agency. In 2018, the United States indicted Ermakov along with several other GRU hackers for their alleged roles in the 2016 American presidential election. Ermakov and the others were charged with breaking into email accounts of Hillary Clinton presidential aides and releasing those documents to interfere with the election. Ermakov was also indicted that same year in hacking and related disinformation campaigns targeting anti-doping agencies and sporting federations. That indictment also said the GRU hackers had targeted a nuclear energy company in Pennsylvania and even hacked a chemical lab in Switzerland that was investigating the poisoning of a former Russian spy in Britain. The GRU target list lines up exactly with the interests of the Russian government and its leader, Vladimir Putin. Ermakov is a wanted man, and the FBI says he should be considered armed and dangerous. They start by learning everything they can about Ermakov, who he is, and who he's working for now.
Retired or former Russian military officer with a pedigree, so to speak, of having been indicted twice by the Justice Department for his role in influence campaigns, a hacker for hire.
They learn that Ermakov is young, ambitious, and he's gone to work for a private company. The company is called M13, and it's based in Moscow, in the southern part of the city. The company advertises itself as a cybersecurity firm, and it tells potential customers it has experts who can test a company's cyber defenses. In other words, it's a hacking company sitting in plain sight.
They said, look, we can create teams of black hats who will use hacking techniques to see if they can break into your website, see if they can cover their tracks, see if they can gain access to your most sensitive data, and then we'll tell you what we were able to do so you can fix those holes in your network. But then what they did is they turned around and they used exactly the same techniques that they were advertising to hack into these filing agents in the US.
M13 works for private clients, but on its website it also says the company works for the government of the Russian Federation and the office of the Russian President, Vladimir Putin.
And here's where the story gets really interesting, because all of the FBI agents and federal prosecutors we spoke to were deeply reluctant to discuss anything to do with Vladimir Putin himself, even though M13 said it worked directly for his office. And Putin is a figure looming over this entire story. One thing is clear: there's something very sensitive going on here.